Hey, friends, how are you doing this evening? Man, I'm glad to be on tonight for this first installment of Family Ish. As you're coming on in, let me know where you're chiming in from. Looking forward to this conversation tonight as we talk about how our family of origin impacts our identity. Man, I'm really excited to be here. Before we get started, as you're coming on in, let me know where you're chiming in from, city and state. Going to check things on my end to make sure we are good to go on both platforms tonight. We're on YouTube and on Facebook. So let me make sure we're doing that. Alrighty. I think we are good to go. Let's make sure we are good. As you're coming on in, let me know where you're coming in from. City and state. Alrighty. All right. I'll make sure we're good to go. Alrighty. I think we are live. We're ready. We're popping. Tonight we're talking about how our family of origin shapes our identity. And I'm so glad to be talking about this. So, if this is your first time here, my name is James Perkins. I am a, what do I call myself? I'm a therapist and a coach, licensed therapist here in the state of North Carolina, do individual and couples therapy, and do some life coaching. So I'm glad that you're here with me tonight. It's been a while since I've been on. I started Wellness Wednesdays in the middle of the pandemic, really as a way to help alleviate the mental and emotional load that a lot of people were facing as a result of being so isolated. And so each week, I jumped on to talk about a varying topic as it relates to our mental and emotional health, because I believe our mental and emotional health is key to our really fulfilling our maximal potential in life. Why else do we need to be emotionally and mentally healthy if not for the purpose of what we're purposed and called to do here on earth? And we need our mental and emotional health in order to do that. So I'm glad that you guys are here with me tonight. Tonight, again, I'm starting a series entitled Family Ish, where we are, for the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks rather, we're going to be exploring different topics as it relates to how our family of origin shapes how our family of origin has shaped us. This first part tonight, I'm going to be talking about how our family of origin shapes our identity. And then in the following weeks, I'm going to be talking about how our family of origin shapes our work, our calling, more or less, and then our relationships. And then last week, on the very last week of this series, I'm going to be having a conversation with a special guest of mine's, where we're going to be talking about actually how to have these conversations and if we should have these conversations with our caregivers. After listening to some of the things that you guys will hear tonight and over the next several weeks, you'll probably want to it'll probably pique some interest in possibly having some conversations with your primary caregivers. So I'm looking forward to talking more about that and going into detail. So why identity? Why is this topic so important? Let's start there. I want to talk about for a couple of moments, why is this topic of identity and how our family of origin has shaped us so important? I think the very first reason I want to start with is this reality that we cannot change what we are not aware of. We cannot change what we're not aware of. So, this is a statement that I often use in my work with clients. And I often say that you have to name it in order to tame it. That you have to put language around what you're experiencing in order for you to be able to get control over it. What happens for a lot of individuals, and especially brothers serve a good majority or good percentage of brothers in my practice that look like me, that share my experience as a black man. And one of the things that I'm often working with them to develop and cultivate is language to put around their experience, because it's one thing to have language. Once you have language, you have a location point in which to decide how you're going to navigate. But if you don't have language to put around your experience, it's going to be very frustrating to be able to navigate forward because you don't know what you're dealing with. In the same way, oftentimes, as it relates to our identity, we can't change the things that we're not aware of. So awareness is key. The second part of that is that I talk about these three versions of ourselves that are always in operation. This first version of yourself is the version of yourself that you are consciously aware of, that you know as an individual, as a person living in your body. This is the first version of yourself. It's the conscious version of yourself that you're aware of. And then the second version of yourself is this version of yourself that the people that are in contact with you know. So your community, your support system, your primary caregivers, whoever they may be, your spouse, your partner, these people have a version of you that they are aware of, that they know as a result of being in contact with you. But then there's this third version of yourself that is not known to either you yourself personally, so the conscious version of yourself you're not aware of, and it is not known to the people that you are in contact with in your support system, in your setting, in your environment. And this version of yourself, which is largely unconscious, is often having impact on those other two versions of yourself. So what am I saying? What I'm essentially saying is that what is largely unconscious to us is having the most profound impact on us. What is largely unconscious to us is having the most profound impact on us. So what we, again, are not aware of, we cannot change. And it's one thing to consciously be aware of things that you need to change. It's another thing to not know that there are things that are in operation in your life, in the way that you think, in the way that you show up, that are impacting your ability to move forward. So first reason why you want to be paying attention tonight is that your family of origin has shaped you, and there are things that are unconscious to you as a result of your experience with your family of origin. There's an old proverb that an old preacher used to say. He said, you can't see all of yourself by yourself. So you need tools and resources, people like me, to help expose you to areas that you just may have not even discovered before until tonight. So second reason, everything in your life, and excuse me for my voice tonight, I live in North Carolina and pollen is starting to hit. I've never been a person that has been impacted by the weather for the most part, but all of a sudden, these last 2 days, spiritual opposition, I believe, because they knew I was coming on tonight, regardless of how things pan out. So I know there's something that somebody probably needs to hear tonight that they need to hear me say. But everything in your life rises and falls on the level of your identity. Everything in your life rises and falls on the level of your identity. I love Proverbs, one of my favorite books of the Bible. And the writer, Solomon Lilly, says this, that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. What is the writer saying there is literally that we will never be able to consistently act contrary to the most dominant beliefs about ourselves. So whatever we're thinking about in our head will eventually show up in our life, so we can't outrun it. And the thing that I find so interesting is that, when we talk about personal transformation is only sustained to the level that we have those core values and beliefs embedded in our identity, which is why for a lot of individuals, even me at times, We can start something and not sustain the effort, in part because these values, these beliefs have not really been embedded in our identity. They're not a part of who we are as of yet. The goal is that after consistent behavior, we will make enough. I love James Clear language here. He says that every day when we get up and we act as the person that we want to be, we cast a vote for that person. So every day that we get up, each interaction that we're having that supports the person that we want to be, that we are doing, we are casting a vote for that person. And so when we cast enough of those votes, those behaviors will become a part of our identity. So secondly, everything in our life rises and falls on the level of our identity. Thirdly, sometimes you just got to look back to go forward. That's just the reality of it. And when I talk about looking back, I know a lot of times people are like, man, why are you so focused on what is already past? And I'm like, I believe there's a lot of value in what is behind us for this very purpose. Oftentimes, when we are able to look back, it actually allows us to go back and reattach a new meaning to an old experience. Man, that's a bomber right there. Sometimes by looking back in order to go forward, it allows us to attach a new meaning to an old experience. I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to push that one tonight, but pay attention. Lastly, most of our behavior, daily behavior, is influenced by our habits. Most of our daily behavior is influenced by our habits, and our habits are a byproduct of our identity. Our habits are a byproduct of our identity. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, suggests that as much as 40 to 50% of daily behavior is driven by our habits, and that these habits are the small repetitive actions that we do automatically. He says that 45 to 50% of our daily behavior is based off our habits. And by and large, the habits that we are acting out on a day-to-day basis are largely unconscious to us. We're just doing them as a matter of memory because we built that habit into our daily life. So if I haven't given you enough reason of why you should be paying attention tonight, you might want to go to another YouTube video. I'm just kidding. I want you guys to stay on the hook with me. But I really want to stress the importance of why I believe it's really important for us to tackle this topic on tonight. All right. So we're down to the nitty-gritty of it. All right. So what I want to do, again, as you're chiming on in, is let me know where you're coming in from, city and state. Even if this is by replay, I have a lot of people that catch me by replay, but I want to know where you're chiming in from. All right. So when I talk about identity, what am I talking about? So I want to define what identity is, and I have a very clear definition that I'm going to read to you so that I don't get jumbled. But I'm going to read it to you. Our identity is the collection of beliefs, values, personality traits, behaviors, and experiences that have defined us. When I talk about identity, I'm talking about the collection of beliefs, values, personality traits, behaviors, and experiences that have defined who we are. We are the summation of those entities that I just mentioned. So when I talk about identity going forward, think of identity as a collection of beliefs, values, personality traits, behaviors, and experiences that have shaped who you are. All right. What's interesting, and I meant to share the story earlier, but I'll share it now. When I was in college, I went to the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. Go Aggies, Aggie pride, where all my Aggies at. And I loved my school. I'm a native of North Carolina, So oftentimes there would be this one restaurant that I would go to consistently. And if you know me and you're on this chat, you probably know what it is. But don't put it in the chat yet. Do not spoil it. This place was called Bojangles. Now, if anybody knows me, they know I love Bojangles. I have a love affair with Bojangles. When I lived in Dallas for graduate school, I when I lived in graduate school, and somebody informed me that the comments are not showing up. Okay, I have to figure out what's going on. Literally, when I lived in graduate school, I went to graduate school at Dallas Seminary in Dallas, Texas, and so I was not able to I was not able to get to a Bojangles because there are no Bojangles in Texas. Yes, there are no Bojangles in Texas. And as a result, whenever I came back to North Carolina, or sometimes we would drive a place, I would try to see where was the nearest Bojangles at. I would try to see where the nearest Bojangles was at. And so I am at North Carolina A&T State University at this time. And I get out of class and I'm planning to head home. I'm on my way home and I'm on the phone with, I don't know who it was at the time. It may have been my mom or my brother. And when I get off the call, I realize that I'm in the Bojangles parking lot. Now, what is extremely funny about this is that I had no intention on going to Bojangles that day. But subconsciously, my brain, because Bojangles was such a part of my regular routine, habit, a part of literally my identity probably at that point, I showed up at this place that I wasn't anticipating on showing up at, that I had no desire. I loved the place, but I wasn't planning on going there on that day. And I learned a very important lesson driving home that day about how when there are things that are unconscious to us that we have done so consistently, that are part of our identity, it will literally lead us to places that sometimes we're not even aware of, that we don't even know. So when I talk about how important this topic is, family of origin, I use that as an example because I think while we have lived in our experience growing up, we're not always aware of the experiences, of the beliefs and values, and I'm getting ahead of myself here tonight, that we are accumulating as a result of our development. And so those things are impacting us in ways that we are not aware of. All right, so how does our family of origin shape our identity? At the base of it, our family of origin essentially is the first environment that shapes our values and beliefs. Our family of origin is the first environment that is having the most impact on our values and beliefs. So essentially, when you were born, or as you were born, when you came out of the womb, every interaction that you had from that moment on is being coded. So you when thinking about a genome sequence or DNA, we have a specific DNA, and because we have a specific DNA, there are certain attributes that come along with the DNA structure that we have. Well, think about your life experience like that every moment of your life experience is being coded, and from this coding, it is forming your values and beliefs about the world, about yourself. So, for instance, if your family stressed hard work, or you saw your parents going to work, really working hard and achieving, you may place a high value on career success. So if you come from a family where they stress hard work, achievement, go to school, get an education, you may have a high priority, a high value around education, around achievement, potentially. if your family of origin or community rather prioritized social connection over hard work, you may prioritize your relationships over career success. Now, I think there's room for both, but depending on what your experience was, it's going to influence your beliefs. So if you have a family potentially that stressed high achievement, that stressed education, that stressed hard work, that's going to influence how you show up in the world. Now, I know people who have did the very opposite of the things of the values that they were embedded in them as a result of that experience. They ran the complete opposite way because they felt like that our families, that the family of origin they grew up in, stressed that value too much, or they stressed it to the point where they felt like the person didn't have a choice. So when we get older, we want to do something different. We want to be independent. So our values and beliefs are largely influenced very early on by our family of origin. Now, what's interesting about these values and beliefs that I think is very interesting is that for the first 15, 16, 17, 18 years of your life, your values and your beliefs around personal worthiness and esteem, around success, around failure, again, around worthiness, about relationships, these values and beliefs are being formed for you, but not by you. I want you to get the difference there. These values around success, failure, worthiness, relationships, these values are being formed for you, but not by you. Now, why that's important is that when your values are being formed for you, but not by you, you don't have a voice in the matter. You don't have a voice in the matter when these values that are being taught to you, that you're being exposed to, are being created, and you're in this environment where it's being reinforced. These values are being formed for you, but not by you. Now, some of these values, as you get older, you realize, like, man, this is a value that I don't want to hold, that I don't want to carry on. But by and large, there are values and beliefs that we have in operation that we didn't choose. They were given to us, handed to us rather, as a result of our environment and our family of origin. Now, there are probably a good amount of values that we have that we haven't consciously thought about that are in play that are actually good values. So I'm not saying that all the values that you taught were bad or evil or not good or not helpful in your development. What I am saying is some of the values that you have that you operate from are not values that you actually chose by yourself. And in some ways, if you actually started to stop and explore some of these values, you will probably even make a different decision on if you want to hold on to that value or if you want to replace it with something else. Because I oftentimes say that sometimes the things that have helped us to survive as kids, certain values, beliefs that helped us to survive as kids in our experience are not the values and beliefs that help us to thrive as an adult. Yeah, I said it. Some of the values that we have and beliefs that helped us to survive as a kid are not actually the values and beliefs that help us to thrive as an adult. All right, I'm going to leave that one alone. Second way in which our family of origin shapes our identity is by our attachment style. Our attachment style. An attachment style essentially refers to the ways in which we bond and connect with our caregivers. In a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be doing a series on this specifically, talking about attachment, but suffice it to say for right now, our attachment style influences how we bond and connect with our caregivers, and it ultimately will impact how we connect with other individuals, most notably our partners, romantic partners. Really has a significant impact in that area, but it definitely impacts all of our relationships. Thirdly, how our family of origin impacts our identity is by our communication patterns. So the ways that our family communicates with each other can influence our own communication style and our ability to express our thoughts and our feelings. So if you grew up in a home where you talked about everything, that communication was something that was you saw expressed by your caregivers, you may find it easier to express and articulate and express yourself in other settings. But if your family was a family that did not communicate, or when they communicated, it was a lot of yelling or voices were raised, that's also going to impact your ability to communicate or how you perceive communication when you are in conversation with someone platonic or romantic. The fourth way in which our family of our origin impacts our identity is by modeling. So guys, get this, man, like that everything that we have experienced, everything that we, for the most part, do on a day-to-day basis finds its crux, finds its foundation in a model that we saw demonstrated to us or a model that we created of our own. Most notably, the models that we first saw are largely the models that are mostly in having the most influence over us if we have not really done any self-work, especially to evaluate those models. Those models are still in the operation. So our family, our primary caregivers were the first models that we saw on how to do things. So these caregivers informed our models around money, around saving, around how we spend it, around how we acquire it. Our first models informed how to build relationships, how do we stay married, how do we make connections. Like our family demonstrated and informed or created this model for us to follow. There's a sermon, I think, by Bishop Jakes where he talked about, I think it was called Model Homes. And in this illustration he used, he talked about that we all have a model for how to build a home. And he was speaking in the context of marriage here. But I thought it was really insightful because he says, we all have a model of how to build a home, but some of us always don't have the correct model. And it's not because we were intentionally trying to build something that wouldn't stand the test of time. It's just that we were only building off the model that we were given. And so sometimes we need a renovation. We need to reevaluate our models to actually ask ourselves, is the model that I'm currently using serving me? Is it helping me to get where I need to go in life? Because if it's not, I need to let it go. And I want to be honest here. Sometimes that is easier said than done because there's a people group, there's a community of people that oftentimes your family of origin or people that you may be in a circle with that are invested in you building your life by the same shared model that they have. And when those models are in conflict with one another, they cause conflict in that relationship because you're both operating from a different manual on how to build that model. Man, that's really good. That's really good. All right. And then lastly, or second to last really, or this will be my last one I'll talk about tonight, is our conflict style. So our conflict style, how to handle conflict, we learned that from our family of origin, right? We learn how to do conflict by our family of origin, whether that is either by avoiding it, whether that either is by being accommodating and sacrificing ourselves just so the conflict would stop. We learned that from our family of origin. I grew up I love my home, but we didn't have a lot of conflict in my home. My home was probably more avoidant. So I didn't really learn a lot of conflict resolution skills because I didn't see it done. Not to say that it wasn't being done, I didn't see it. And so that impacted me, especially in the early parts of my marriage, just learning how to really have a dynamic, healthy conflict resolution session, if you want to call it, with my spouse, with my partner, with my bae. Um, and so our conflict styles are going to influence, one, our ability to connect with people. It's going to definitely influence how far that we go and the pursuit of our potential. So, our family of origin, excuse me, our family of origin shapes our identity by our values and beliefs that they model for us, by their modeling, by our attachment style, so how we connect and bond with individuals, by our communication patterns, and by our modeling, by our conflict styles. And so all of this is going to be the, if you will, the instrument that is used to shape our identity and who we are as a person. Now, I'm sharing this because I think it's really important that I say this before I transition, and that is, out of all of what I've just talked about on tonight, these are the things that have shaped our identity. But I want you guys to listen to me clearly tonight. Is that our identity, our true identity, is not the identity that was shaped for us. It is the identity that our Creator established and knew and had in mind for us. So, what am I saying essentially? And I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper in the next session, but I'm going to give you a preview here now, is that your behavior may be lying to you. That sounds funny to say that your behavior is lying to you, but it is. Our behavior is not our identity. Our behavior is not our identity. So our problems, the behavioral problems that we demonstrate, they're not our true identity. So for a lot of individuals, one of the reasons that it's hard to begin the transformation of their identity is because they believe so firmly that the behaviors that they have demonstrated are the truest version of who they are. And that's not accurate. It's not accurate. I bring up as a reference here Jeremiah 1:4, where God says to Jeremiah that before I placed you in your mother's womb, before I formed you, I knew you. That's a very important phrase I want you to pay attention to. He says to Jeremiah that before I formed you, I knew you. What he was saying to Jeremiah is that before you were even a thought in your mother's mind, before your mom, dad, or the people that procreated you did the act of procreation to bring you here, I already had in mind my perception, my identity of who you were. So when God says he knew you before he formed you, what he's saying is, I knew all of who you were going to be before I placed you in your mother's womb. Before I placed you in your mother's womb, I knew the true version of who you are. Not the version that you may believe that you know right now as a result of the circumstances in your life, as a result of the behavioral patterns that you find yourself caught into in this moment. No, God, your Creator, knows the true you. So you have to ask yourself, if God knows the true version of who I am, why have I had the experiences that I've had growing up? Both good and bad. I don't say that all of them are bad, but why have I had these experiences? Because get this, God knows that the experiences that you were going to have in your family of origin, none of those things were going to be able to stop you from achieving, from attaining, from you pursuing all that God had created you to be. Not unless you allowed it to. I'm going to stop and let this sink in for a moment. None of the experiences that you've had from the time that you were born, have interrupted God's plan for your life. So God's view of you is still intact. How he sees you is still intact. His perception of who you are is still intact. And according to Jeremiah again, 29:11, he says, the plans that I have for you are good and not of evil, to give you an expected end. So the plans, the thoughts that God had about who you are, who he saw you becoming, those are the things that he already had in mind for you from the beginning. So what does this lead? What conclusion can this hopefully lead you to draw? Let me give you one. One is that the experiences of your childhood, of your family of origin, have set you up to fulfill your purpose and destiny. Man, that's amazing. The experiences that you have had as a result of your interaction with your family of origin have actually set you up for your purpose, for the thing that he's called you to be, for the thing that he's called you to do. And so all these experiences that have shaped you, again, said this earlier, that some of the experiences that we have attached a negative meaning to, we may have to actually go back and reattach a new meaning because of this simple fact that God knows us, and because he knows us and he knew what we were going to face. We have to at least consider that, man, maybe the meaning that I'm attaching to this experience is not the best meaning to attach to it. Someone may have rejected you, and as a result of that rejection, you may have come away believing that I'm no longer lovable, that nobody's going to accept me. And that's not the truth. And that's just one example. So I want you to, as you are moving forward, going forward tonight, I want you to consider this reality that, man, the truest version of myself is the version that God knew before I even got here. So all of what I have been living and demonstrating, some of those aspects we've already lived into in our identity as a believer, especially for those of you who claim faith, we're already living in some of those aspects already. But there are also some other things that, as a result of our lived experience and the stories and narratives that we have wrapped around them, are prohibiting us, those narratives rather, are prohibiting us from really living out our true identity. So that's all I have for tonight. This has really set us up for our next week's segment on how our family of origin is shaping our calling, shaping the work that we're called to do. But before I get off tonight, I want to share with you guys something that I'm a part of. So I am on the board of a very fabulous organization called the Village Foundation Fund, which is headed, I have no qualms, I have no shame here, shameless plug, by my beautiful, gorgeous wife, Camila Jarvis Perkins. Started the Village Foundation Fund, and this fund is really dedicated, my wife has dedicated, I butchered that word, has dedicated her life to helping kids prepare for college. And so she started this nonprofit called the Village Foundation Fund. And what I connected, it's right here on the screen, I connected with her and I said, hey, babe, you know what? What do you think about, and I can't remember if she offered this or if I did. I think she did. She may have, or I may have. I'll take the credit. But she offered this. She said, hey, why don't you offer a wellness checkup session for the kids who are recipients of the Village Foundation Fund's scholarships. And we have 3 scholarships there, as you can see. the 3 different scholarships. The deadline again is April 17th. And you can donate or apply at villagefoundationfund.org. Villagefoundationfund.org. So I want you guys to consider donating and partnering with me and my wife to help support these kids who are in pursuit of their education and in pursuit of excellence. I'm helping them by providing a safe space for them to process life as they're navigating this domain or territory as college students, and I want you to help me be a part of that. Again, I'm raising this because the deadline again is April 17th. Don't waste your time. I want you to go there tonight, villagefoundationfund.org, and I want you to make a donation. That's all I want you to do today. If you would like to get in contact with me, you can do so by visiting jamesperkins.help. jamesperkins.help. I'm going to put that in the comments. And I look forward to connecting with you. If you want to say, hey, man, this is really impactful to me, and I think I want to explore some stuff with you, jamesperkins.help. We can book an appointment, whether for therapy or for coaching. I would love to support you along your journey. All right, friends, it's been a great night. Until next week, be safe. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.